wonder what's hot in the baking world right now? It's not even that complicated. You get store-bought croissants, cut them open, shove in some store-bought cookie dough, and that's it. Hi everyone, I'm Gemma Stafford, professional chef, cookbook author, and creator of Bigger Bolder Baking. Welcome to Need to Know, your go-to podcast for everything baking entertainment. From the latest trends,
this is the viral scrambled pancake trend.
What? To the tips and tricks you crave.
We discovered that if you take apple peels, toss them in a little cinnamon and sugar, and bake them for about an hour in the oven, you get a really lovely treat.
Plus exclusive interviews with baking pros.
Hey, it's Liz from the Sugar Geek Show. Thanks for having me, Gemma.
We've even got the Bold Baking Hotline to answer all of your baking queries and questions.
Is a Dutch oven really necessary for baking bread, and what difference does it make?
Yes, I think we probably would agree on that, do we, Oni?
Yeah, oh, good. So join us every Sunday for your new weekly baking ritual. It's everything you need. That's KNEAD to know.
Westholme is working with the land to create nature-led Australian Wagyu. Westholme believes that when nature leads, flavor follows. Learn more at westholme.com.
You're listening to Heritage Radio Network.
This is What Doesn't Kill You, Food Industry Insights. I'm your host, Katie Kiefer, and today we're talking about a new topic, at least one that we haven't talked about on this show for quite a while, and that is food waste. And as most of you who've been tuning in, I've been stuck on this water situation, talking about water for like a year now. So I was very happy to get a press release over the transom that suggested I talk to Matt Joswiak, who is the founder and CEO of an organization called Rethink Food. Matt has a really long CV all about his fabulous experiences working in the high-end restaurant industry. It's so long, I'm not even actually going to go through it, but clearly it led him to this place where he decided in 2017 to start Rethink Food. So Matt, take it away. What is Rethink Food? Why did you start it? And what do you do now?
Sure. Yeah. So Rethink Food is a nonprofit based in New York City. Our mission statement is to create a sustainable and equitable food system. And what that means to us is that, we utilize excess food, excess inventory, just a variety of products from grocery stores to major manufacturers to little restaurants in the city to our best food donor, 11 Madison Park. And we make meals and we cater local community centers to make, build some efficiency in the supply chain for all of the people distributing food. We do another part of our work, which is around equity, which is getting, small businesses in the communities we serve involved in philanthropic or government work. A lot of times nonprofits kind of leave out, the folks that are in the neighborhood. So we work with local restaurants, anything from Mana's Soul Food to Zob Zob in Queens, local small restaurants, owned by folks with a similar background is the people that we're serving. So Chinese folks making Chinese food for Chinese people.
Right.
And we do that. So we grant out anywhere between $3 and $7 million a year in cash to these small businesses. And then we also, help the city of New York distribute grants as well.
Wow. So that's a lot of different prongs of your fork, as it were. Forgive me. I couldn't resist that. But I mean, I was wondering because, to be honest with you, I didn't fully grasp. I saw that you gave out money, but I didn't really understand how that worked. So you were giving money to small restaurants, local restaurants, so that they can, continue to support. So are they giving that food away to the community or? Yeah.
So they cater local community centers. It's actually, I got to give credit to this guy, Winston, who I used to work with a long time ago when we were starting Rethink. We used to drive trucks around Midtown all the time, right? In the middle of the night, collect excess food from the restaurants. As soon as they closed, we'd meet the general manager and collect it. And one night he was like, why don't we just give them some money to do it?
To do it themselves. Right.
Yeah. And I was like, well, maybe. And then COVID hit and it became kind of this issue of safety first. We didn't want too many people congregated in one kitchen. So we distributed the work. But then we really realized that it's just like it's an efficiency thing, like operational efficiency. You can get the lowest cost per unit and the highest meal unit, we call them meal, but we can get the highest absolute quality with the least amount of shipping if
Right.
we have small businesses, doing this work. So it really just became about efficiency. For large scale donations, like, we get pallets of stuff and like, half of a Trader Joe's and all that kind of stuff. A restaurant really can't do anything with that. So we have our own kitchen where we bring stuff in. But it's been an evolution of a very simple idea.
And that simple idea was to collect unused food. So this is different. Let's be clear. This is different from, say, City Harvest, which is taking prepared food already and bringing it to
like Seamless, and like think about it like Seamless and Instacart. Like City Harvest, is like the Instacart. Like they're going to deliver. They have groceries and pantry bags, and often they don't. They have like like household items. Like they're really whatever they can get to support their communities. And so they're really, really, really good at filling up the pantry. But when it comes to prepared food, we're kind of the prepared food people.
Oh, really? Because I thought that I have friends who volunteered with them for years and they were always packing meals, but maybe it was just for like Thanksgiving or something like that. I don't know them well enough to know.
They'll distribute the food to like a community center. The community center might cook meals out of it. But they're like giant, and the scale which they operate, I don't think people, it's crazy. They're doing like millions and millions and millions of pounds of food. It's really impressive.
Right, right. So your role, you're the CEO and the founder. So are you finding these donations, or what, how do you see yourself now that the Mac Daddy of this? Like what do you do now?
What do I do now? That's a good question. My wife asks me that all the time. Like, what do you do? I do podcasts, No, I do a lot. I try to I do a lot of advocacy, day to day, I try to advocate for better government procurement. Like the government buys all of this food. The example is like something we're really trying to get over the line is you have like, school food's like a huge issue, right? And it's an issue because the cost that they have to do it is like $2. I think it's $2.80 per kid for lunch.
Something like that, with only 90 cents of that going for actual food, if I recall correctly.
Exactly. So your food costs are like crazy low. So, if there's, let's say, some nutritious nut bar, like, like a Kind bar or like one of those kinds of things that has 30 days to expiration. So, 7-Eleven's not going to buy it. Whole Foods isn't going to buy it. Well, like, how do we connect those two parts of the supply chain so the kids are eating something more healthy, but the costs are being reduced and kind of everybody wins? So we do a lot of kind of like bigger advocacy for that. I spend a lot of time on that, and then fundraising and trying to engage with as many philanthropic donors as possible to raise money and keep the lights on.
Right. That pool of people, as we are discovering at Heritage Radio, is becoming smaller and smaller because there are more and more organizations that legitimately need that funding. And somehow our government is failing to provide the services that all these nonprofits are serving, that are providing, right? That's really what it comes down to, especially with a food advocacy organization like your own. Why are a couple of chefs suddenly in the business of advocating for people who don't have enough to eat? I think that's an interesting leap. Like, what made you were working at like Noma, 11 Madison Park, all these really fancy high-end restaurants. And what were you seeing that drove you to create this model?
There's a lot of things. There's a lot of things over time that kind of did. I like volunteered and I was kind of shocked by the efficiency. And it's kind of interesting, it's that you say that it's like fine dining chefs haven't done it. I think it's crazy that that it took so long. Like you have, really well-meaning people who run, food operations,
right,
with no culinary background. So there's no, food safety is a challenge, and this is a challenge, and this is a challenge. So the culinary expertise really helped a lot.
Sure.
I wanted to start, family meal was always really, I came from kind of a low income background. And so when I started in restaurants when I was 18, like I loved family meal. because it was like the most consistent meal I had gotten since I lived with my mom in Milwaukee, Wisconsin when I was like 14. You know, like it was there every day at 4:00. It was like all I could eat.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, we can make this family meal for everybody. And I also think Family Meal is the best nonprofit in New York City. I think Family Meal feeds more people than any other nonprofit in New York through all the restaurants that, do it. And I was like, why can't we do this? This is a great way to utilize excess product. This is a great way to kind of help people out. Like, why can't we just make a little bit more family meal and then distribute it past the four walls of the restaurant?
Right. Very interesting. Wow. All right. So we've talked a little bit about the model. We're going to get into that. You have a commissary kitchen. So you raise money for other organizations, for other restaurants, so that they can deliver food to their low income population or whatever, their food challenged population. I want to use the right terminology here. And then you also have a commissary kitchen where you are producing meals and you're getting donations. You said from like Trader Joe's. Are you getting mostly produce? Are you getting packaged goods? Like how, or all of the above?
Whole gambit. It's really, whatever. It's crazy. Every day the truck rolls up and it's all kinds of stuff. And so it's always an adventure.
Mm-hmm. And really, do you have to also buy stuff as well? It's not just donations.
Yeah. So like, this is like a big difference, I think, with Rethink. Like there's organizations that take excess food from restaurants and drop it off at a community center. It's really important. But, it's hard for the community center. It's an F&B. It's a restaurant, like we call it soup kitchens, whatever you want to call them. Like they are in every respect of the word a restaurant. The only difference between them is there's no bill. So they have to have a protein starch. They have to do coffee. They have to have, water ready, napkins, forks. And so if you drop off like, here's 16 trays of rice and 4 Shake Shack burgers, because this is like what we have left over, it's like, what are they going to do? What are they going to do? So for us,
absolutely.
We take kind of catering orders. We really look at it like a catering operation, and we listen to that. Like, okay, you have 480 people on average coming to your community center. We're going to provide 480 meals, 480 portions of rice, 480 portions of veggies, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So we have to buy something to make that happen sometimes. But
of course,
30 to 40% we buy.
Interesting. I mean, I worked in a soup kitchen for, as a volunteer for quite a while. And they were feeding about 2,500 people a day. And it was definitely like a mix. Like the woman who ran that place was a genius, and she'd been in the food service, like in that space for a long time. So she had all these connections with upstate farms who were unloading ugly produce and we used it both in the soup kitchens and in bags, in grocery bags for people to pack out. So I figured it was sort of a similar kind of situation for you. Because, as you say, you can't just like take 10 trays of rice from somebody and have 3 hamburgers. Like, no.
Yeah.
So how many people, so once you make the meals, you're giving this to community centers? By community centers, are you talking about soup kitchens and food pantries, or are you talking about like senior centers, or trying to get a bead on who your constituency is?
It's really, it's after school programs, shelters, it really wherever it's needed. We, a member of our team and kind of put together a really smart request for information program. So we have like a way that you can apply to get food, and then we match that. We match that with kind of like the needs map, which is done by like Robin Hood and a couple of other organizations. And but what's really cool, which I'm super impressed by the team by, is now we're starting to kind of overlay, like a lot of times philanthropy will like hit a neighborhood, like give them all this stuff, and then other neighborhoods that might be kind of like medium need don't get anything. So we're kind of like trying to overlay, like, where is philanthropy giving a lot of money, and let's go to the neighborhoods where they're not giving a lot of money. So we're in all 5 boroughs and in Miami, but we're kind of all over the place.
Oh, we're going to talk about that in a minute. So how many people do you employ for this? I was amazed at how many. I looked at your website very extensively. I mean, you must have over 100 people working there at least.
No, we have 55, but through the restaurants, like each restaurant, we have like 50 restaurants in the program right now is employing at a minimum, I would say 8 people. So I think all in, we're probably on the conservative number we've gotten to is like 550 people that are employed because of the work that we're doing.
Oh, that's great. Wow. And so one thing I noticed that was curious to me was what is the difference between a meal making partner and a meal making restaurant? Like this is on your website.
Yeah, no, it's just semantics. So some of them are like, this incredible entrepreneur, Lorena, who runs Chefscape. And, it's not really a restaurant. So we just call them a partner. It's more catering operation.
So they take some of your food and they're able to convert that into meals for whoever their local population is.
Yeah.
So it's not just all coming out of your kitchen.
Yeah. So
how many people actually work in your commissary?
About 30. If you include the driving team, there's about 25, 30.
Right. I mean, and they're turning out how many meals a day?
We do about close to 20,000 a week. So about 4,000 a day.
Wow. With 30 people, and most of them are truck drivers. That's incredible.
Well, yeah, there's like six or seven truck on the trucking team. But yeah, it's a pretty tight operation. Ken and Arturo do a good job. They really make it nice.
Yeah, no, it looked like a happy situation, a happy staff, everything like that. I was curious about how things have changed. I mean, you mentioned on your website working with refugee groups, and obviously since the pandemic is over, things have changed a lot. You started this just before the pandemic started, and then you weathered the pandemic, which may have been actually helpful to you in some ways, it seemed like. And then now you have maybe a slightly different population that is needing your help. Can you talk a little bit about those shifts over the last 5-6 years since you started?
Yeah. I mean, look, it's been like a roller coaster. Like, during COVID, it was just like we were positioned between small local businesses and community centers, and like there was very few nonprofits and food. So like it was just like the restaurants were all closing. There was such a demand, and we were just like in the middle of it. And it was, I could write a book on that time because it was just wild. But it was helpful. We always find these challenges to be helpful for the way that we like understand our work and do what we do. We really didn't spend a lot of time thinking about like Ramadan and halal food and kosher food and stuff like that before the pandemic. Sure. But we really, because of our expansion, we got to know all these different communities and challenges. And what I love about New York is that no neighborhood is the same at all. They could be different cities, and so we have a really good grasp on kind of New York and what it needs with the migrant influx. Which is, I think, in time will be viewed as a huge blessing for this city, as though it was hard financially on the city to house people. But I'm sure 2 years ago everybody was talking about how they couldn't find help, how you couldn't hire a cook,
sure,
or you couldn't do anything, and that's like gone. Like everybody's fully staffed, everything's okay.
Right.
That's completely changed. I think that's been really helpful. And I think for us, with the migrant population, it gave us the opportunity to show city government that for all that's going on in the mayor's office, they've been incredible partners in helping us, pilot this program to show that restaurants can, execute government contracts. Like for whatever reason, we let them feed us and do everything. And we let them bail out all the people. They bailed out the whole social safety net during COVID, restaurants did. And then, when things settled down and we needed help and we needed meals, we're like, oh, no, restaurants, you guys can't do that. You can feed our doctors, but you can't feed our migrants.
Wow. Wow.
So, it's been really, really great to see, restaurants being able to get involved in this work.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great, and I certainly endorse the idea that we are, not wasting food. Let's talk for a minute about the numbers, and then we'll go let's talk more about kind of the overall, what the meaning of it is when you have private institutions partnering with nonprofits like yours and, basically taking up the slack that the government, for whatever reason, is not taking up. But let's talk numbers for a second first. So how many pounds of food have you saved from landfill so far?
I think this year we're at about 408,000. About 408,000.
Right. So is that more than previous years? I think on your website it's like 1.3 million or something like that. I forget how many millions of pounds.
It's
pretty good.
We're really struggling with this number, to be vulnerable. Because all right, so let's say that you're at your house and your partner, whoever, and you go on a trip and you have half a sandwich and you give it to them. Well, is that diverted, or is that sharing, or is that donated, or like, how do we quantify? Like, we have a restaurant, for example, Brain Food, who is incredible, one of our best partners, and they donate all of their fruit salad at the end of the day to a community center. But is that, if they didn't do it, it would go in the trash. But that day that they do it, it's still viable. So counting it and figuring it out has been a very active discussion. So we have a low estimate, and we always like to estimate low in case we're grilled on it for some reason. But the number is like a lot.
Truth in advertising, Matt. Truth in advertising.
Exactly. Well, I mean, the thing that drives me nuts is when I see these things where it's like, $1 will feed somebody for 70 years. I'm like, how?
Yeah, right.
It's impossible. So I never want to be that nonprofit.
Right. No, I respect that. But and then you say, I mean, one of the things that people don't really recognize is when you talk about saving food, what you're also doing is saving the water used to grow the food. I have to get the water thing in because I'm just not happy if I'm not talking about water, apparently. But I mean, it's just, people don't think about how many billions of gallons of water go into growing a field of, I don't know, string beans, whatever, grapes, whatever it is. But I mean, so you guys have a big number. You have a big number on water. And how many meals have you served? Sorry to make you do this, but I mean, people should know this.
Since inception, I think like 22, 23 million meals.
Pretty good.
Yeah, we did okay. It's been a lot of food, a lot of lunch. I would say we fed like Madison Square Garden like 10,000 times or something like that.
That's as good a way as any to let people understand what the volume is here. We're going to take a short break for a sponsor drop. We'll be right back with Matt Joswiak with Rethink Food, so stay tuned for that.
Whether you're a chef or just love going to restaurants, you know the best ingredients are everything, especially when it comes to beef. In Northern Australia, there's a different approach to raising high-quality beef. Westholme, based in Queensland and Northern Territory, is working with the land to create nature-led Australian Wagyu. Westholme stewards 16 million acres of rangeland guided by their natural ecosystem. They're led by a belief that if they balance the needs of their cattle with the needs of the environment, both can thrive. Westholme's team of rangeland experts and nature managers use a variety of tools to monitor and respond to the welfare of the environment, like satellites that assess grass health and on-the-ground research. Cattle are happier when they have the freedom to forage and explore, so Westholme ensures that they can roam wild, foraging at will for the first 2 to 3 years of their lives. Their cows graze on native grasses like Mitchell grass, which is only found in Australia, along with dozens of other plants, herbs, and seasonal legumes. The result is a high-quality Wagyu beef that reflects the terroir of Northern Australia and a flavor suited to complement any cuisine. Westholme believes that when nature leads, flavor follows. Learn more at westholme.com.
So, as we have often observed, in this country, we waste, and this is interesting to me because I think it's got to be at least 10 years ago that I interviewed Dana Gunders, who at that time was with Food and Water Watch, right? And she was quoting that number of 42% of the food that we produce in the United States is wasted. And to me, it's interesting that nothing has changed since then. We've gone 10 years and we have not dented that number. But let's talk a little bit about the factors that add up to that. Like what, as somebody who now has obviously studied this pretty carefully, what are the biggest contributing factors to food waste, do you think, Matt?
Well, I'm bringing up Dana, like she just had a huge win. One of the biggest massive problems is the date labeling thing.
Yes, right.
completely made up, right? Like,
Yeah.
and some people are so intentional about making it. There's a grocery store in New York that puts the shelved on, meaning when they put it on the shelf, and it's
Oh,
just like
really?
so tiny, and then you just see
Yeah.
it. So then you buy it, you put it in your fridge, you look at it, you assume it's expired. Like,
Right.
it's so crazy, and that miscommunication about food safety is really, really, really damning. Like, I think if you eat a yogurt or something that's like, I'm not giving advice here publicly on what to eat and what not to eat, but like,
Right.
if you eat a yogurt that's like a day past, like, you're going to be fine. But if you eat poached eggs at brunch are much more scarier than food that's past its best by date.
Ain't that the truth, man? People
Yeah.
do not realize. Or hollandaise sauce. Oh my God. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. The eggs Benedict is like the food. Yeah. I asked a doctor that once. I was like, when I was researching, the foodborne illness stuff, and I was like, what is the most common? And it's just like brunch, man. Like,
Yeah.
brunch.
Oh, for sure. Well, I mean, the stuff is sitting out there, but also more importantly, it's like the stuff that you're trying to get rid of at the end of the week as a chef. It's like brunch is made for emptying your refrigerator, right? I mean,
100%. And then everybody
Yeah.
coaches eggs before service because you can't do it all minute. And so,
of course, right. So they're sitting there in their nice warm bath,
yeah,
breeding bacteria for like 3 hours. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, no, I think people just think it's so, and my mom, she's like, oh, you've eaten more expired eggs than you've eaten fresh eggs. Like, she's, the whole thing is like, it's fine. A lot of these things are like completely fine if
Yes.
time and temperature controls are key. And Rethink spends a lot of time and a lot of energy measuring time and temperature. So I think date labeling is pretty bad. I think this obsession with, like, have you ever read the War on Bacteria? What was that book? No, it's, The Art of Fermentation has this whole section about the war on bacteria and how we just go like everything is going to kill us if we don't know what it is. Like, it's just like not true. And so I think there's a lot of misinformation out of there that's actually kind of intentionally driving us to buy more food. I mean, if we're throwing away 40% of it, means we're buying 40% more than we need, which means that somebody's numbers are 40% up. Like, it's good for somebody.
Yes, I think, and I think we know who that is. Yeah, because it's not good for us, right? If we're wasting 40% of our food budget, that's not cool. I mean, I think shopping habits are also in play here, don't you, Matt? I mean, because I think that people tend to overload their carts when they're in the grocery, especially in a big superstore, like a giant Stop and Shop, and you're like, whoa, I got this. Ooh, I could get that. And rather than shopping every day as they do in other countries or every other day, you shop for a week. And then sometimes by the end of the week, your produce, not so great. Got to throw it out, whatever. I don't know. Stuff like that also, I think, plays a factor in it.
I think it's a huge factor. I think, the one thing that I find so interesting is that like most kitchens I worked in had waste logs. And, if you have if people, just write down, like, instead of writing down, when you go to grocery store, like, yeah, there's some things like flour or whatever you might need or whatever. But like, for the most part, you're going to go there and you're going to be like, oh, like the lettuce looks nice and this looks nice. And, oh, this looks great. And, the whatever protein. But if you write down what you threw out and you bring that list with you and you're like, oh, I threw out 2 pints of raspberries last week, you're not going to buy 3 pints of raspberries. You know what I mean? Like, and so I think going to the grocery store with like a list of what you threw out is more impactful than going to a grocery store with a list of what you need.
That's a very interesting observation. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. This is, that was good. That was really good, Matt.
Thanks.
I like that. The other thing, here's another thing for restaurants. Now, I know that restaurants are some of them are going back towards smaller portions, like more human-sized portions. But when I was like 30 years ago or whatever, I guess it was, 30-something years ago, I worked in a butcher shop on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. And right next door to us was a restaurant called Carmine's. And Carmine's was enormously popular right out of the gate because they served what they called family-style portions. And these were like massive, massive platters of food. And, everybody theoretically at the table would have a piece of whatever it was. And then I think portion control just went crazy in the restaurant industry. And as a veteran of high-end restaurants, was that something that you saw happening in your restaurants, or was that more sort of mid-level Olive Garden-y type? Not that Carmine's was like Olive Garden, because it was really a very nice restaurant, but it was, it sort of pioneered that style of abundanza. And I'm not sure that we ever really pulled back from that. And I wondered if you had a thought about that particular trend.
I think the biggest culprit is the buffet, more than anything else. I think the idea of having like a limited food laying out is like, it's bad. I mean, because it's hard. Because then, there's no world where you're going to be exactly right, and then you have to kind of figure it out. So I think I've seen more and more of is the service station where somebody's serving you the buffet instead of you yourself, which helps a lot, because if it's controlled and the food service workers wearing gloves and all the hairnet and everything, then you can save the food and cool down the food as long as it's not been in the danger zone too long. But the buffets, like, I see it all the time, and I'm like, they're really, really, very wasteful.
Yeah, very interesting. That's a really, I mean, that's all hotels, conventions, like all of that stuff. When you go to those meetings or those conferences or whatever, they're all buffets, and it's just like that, and it's rarely policed. And I know that, like, I did a show years ago with a guy named Ken Toong, who is the food and beverage director for UMass Dining, and they serve 25,000 kids a day on their campus, and they have like 5 or 6 dining rooms. And he totally transformed their dining in terms of waste by not giving kids a tray. Like they had to go take a plate and go get whatever particular thing and the choices were amazing. The food was delicious. I mean, he revolutionized college dining. But they could not take a tray and put 10 different plates and have one bite of each thing and throw the rest out. Like, he shut that right down. And I think a lot of places have emulated that. And that really speaks to what you're talking about too.
Totally. I noticed it in the, I was at the airport lounge, the Delta thing. And I went in there and I was like, they had the smallest plates. And I was like, that's so smart. Just have it's a smaller plate. If you want more, go back. It's there. You know what I mean? Like, the smaller plates help. Because plate waste is there's nothing you can do with plate waste.
That's irretrievable. Exactly. That's going in the trash, and there's just no way around that. Absolutely. So what do you think? Let's move on for a second, because believe it or not, we're going to run out of time. Oh my God. It's already at the 30-minute mark. What are the biggest challenges? Well, when you started this organization, now that we've talked about what food waste is all about and why we have it and all of that jazz, what was the hardest thing to getting your organization started? Was it finding the partners for donation, or finding the workers? I mean, what?
I don't know. It was really hard. I mean, the hardest thing was that I had to work 2 jobs, and I worked every day for 2 years, 7 days a week. That really was super tough. Yeah. But fundraising was, I really lucked out. I met some really great people early on that were super helpful. So that wasn't so hard.
Well, you had some opportunities there because you worked in the high-end restaurant industry. So you could go and talk to, Daniel, I don't know, Let Us Entertain You, or, one of the other big groups.
Yeah. And Daniel Hume was super open to, what I mean? When I left 11 Madison Park, he was him and his former partner were just oh yeah. And the other thing is they couldn't be no, we don't have, I got a lot of, we don't have any food waste. And I got a lot of, it's illegal. And
yeah.
So I used to carry the Good Samaritan law around, a printout of it around in my backpack. And because I just got so tired of answering that question that I just said, no, here's the law. Actually, it's not legal. And and so that myth busting was hard. But I found communications really challenging. People, it's garbage. You're going through dumpsters and cooking stuff and giving it away. And this idea of what waste is, and back to that analogy of sharing a sandwich in your fridge, it's just it's nothing changes value like food. And, at 11 Madison Park back in the day when they served duck, that duck was $90 on the a la carte menu at the bar. And then at midnight, or at 10 o'clock when the kitchen closed, it was worth $0. Like,
That's right.
and it's crazy. And so this communications thing about what's good and what's fresh and what is fresh and how do you call it? Like, we don't say food waste at Rethink, we say excess food because it's just extra. But comms is hard, definitely hard.
Yeah. Very interesting. I saw that you had Whole Foods listed as a donor, and that made me think about, other grocery store chains. Because like in France, they in 2017 or 2016, they made it a law. It is illegal for a grocery store to throw out wholesome food. They have to repurpose it.
Yeah.
They give it to an organization, whatever. They have a government organization that takes that food and repurposes it to, community centers, et cetera, soup kitchens, all the stuff we've talked about. What do you think? What would it take for us to get something like that here? I mean, that doesn't seem like that heavy a lift to me to make that a policy priority.
I don't know why. Like, it's really just like very silly. And I also think that like the government, does have the power to like put out, and, it's the things that I try to like advocate for. Like they put out like an RFP, like request for proposals on how something would do it. The thing is we do have trucks going around our city every single day that are refrigerated, dropping off food. So they could also pick up food and like help redistribute it. And I think the produce companies would love that. They would love the extra business and they would do it. Or the government just funds City Harvest to do it. Like they're already doing it. They should, if the government funded City Harvest, we could make that a reality and it would be a huge win. It's just, we've started composting in New York, stopped composting, started, stop, like so many times that it's hard to get these things over the finish line.
I would agree. And funding for composting when you don't have a lot of people coming on board with it, that I saw was a very difficult policy choice. I thought it was a great idea, but I could see the logistics being really problematic because where do you go? Who's taking it? I mean, here in Rhode Island where I am, we have an organization called Earth Care Farm, and they will accept stuff for compost from anyone. And they have a huge composting facility. But absent that, it's really difficult to manage compost efficiently.
Yeah, especially with the amount
without
of weight.
turning it into garbage, basically, right? Because if you don't do it right, it's garbage.
And then you ship it around again.
Right. Then you ship it into a landfill where it emits methane. I mean, we haven't talked about the fact that discarded food contributes enormously to our, climate changing. It gives off so many VOCs, particularly methane, but other ones as well, right? So was that in your mind when you started Rethink?
Yeah, the thing, I'm like a Midwestern guy, and like I was really just trying to think about what is like the problem that I see that is needed to be fixed. Like I was like, what is the thing nobody wants to do? It's a big thing that we say at Rethink too. Like we do the work nobody wants to do, and nobody wanted to drive a truck around. Like we knew this was a problem, and everybody kept telling me, they're like, oh no, somebody else does that. And I'm like, well, like I work in a kitchen and I just threw away like a bunch of food, so I guess not. And I think it was just more about being very pragmatic about the needs of our food community and trying to make it together. I learned I didn't barely went to high school. I didn't go to college. All of this stuff, this policy stuff, this management, everything is completely foreign to me. So I was like, oh yeah, like people want, like I used to hand out like orange juice on the J train at like midnight when I was heading back to Coach after working. And I was like, it's just simple. Like somebody should do this. Nobody's doing it. I'll do it. Hopefully other people want to help. And if that works, then, I'll do it for a while and then I'll open up my restaurant. That was the plan.
Do you feel like your background is what drove you to work in the food insecure community?
That's what my wife says. I think so. I mean, I don't know. I don't know why it happened that way. I really don't. But yeah, when I was in...
it is really interesting. I mean, I think it's fascinating that you've gone from working in this really very rarefied atmosphere of places like 11 Madison Park or Noma or whatever. And now you're redistributing food. Wow, what a career change.
Yeah. It didn't like right now as I'm talking to you, I'm still in a kitchen. So it never really it didn't feel weird, like it never felt like I was doing anything different. Like, and Rethink has a lot of the same kind of ethos of kitchens, like sense of urgency and, very team oriented organization, like it's almost like Fish Station is programs and Garmager is finance. I don't run it that way,
but that is funny though. Funny analogy. So, I mean, we only have a few minutes left, Matt. So let's talk a little bit about, you're in New York. You have a commissary in New York. You have many partners in New York. I think I saw about 30.
Yeah.
And then you said you're also in Miami. Why did you go to Miami? What was that? What was the catalyst for that?
The big thing for Miami was somebody I was lucky enough to meet, Soon Hill, who owns is partners with Michael Schwartz at Michael's Genuine down there, and really inspiring guy. And he was, we need the three magic pieces to open up a Rethink program are somebody willing to fund it, somebody willing to make the food, and somebody willing to hand out the food. And he's like, my restaurant's doing great, and my clientele is interested in philanthropic activity, so they added 2% to every check. And I was like, oh, that's great, that'll be like a couple $1,000 maybe. It ended, we're going to cross $1 million by the end of the year.
Wow.
It's raised it's just been great. And then we've been able to give that money to Haitian restaurants in Little Haiti, and they cater a Haitian community center in Little Haiti. So it's perfect and works really, really well. So any restaurant can get involved with Rethink. All they have to do is, add a surcharge to the check, and then not a surcharge, we're not allowed to say that. Add an additional fee to the check, and then that's it.
And then they add that fee, and then you guys come in and you find your partner donors and your community organizations and buy some trucks. You're making it sound so easy, Matt. I don't think it is.
I mean, it's like you find a restaurant that's making food in the community. A lot of these restaurants in the communities that we partner with are already doing this. They're already serving. They already take care of the meals after church and all that kind of stuff. They're very community minded folk, and so you have that. That's relatively easy. And then the transportation. There's a million ways to move things from point A to point B. Especially in some situations, people can walk the meals to the community center. And then, there's plenty of community centers that are looking for resources to hand out food. So it actually, I mean, I am making it sound simple, but it kind of is.
Wow. Amazing. So are you going to continue to expand?
We're going to really focus, I think, for the next couple of years on working with local governments to spend their money in the communities that we serve. That has been by far out of all this. The meals are incredible. They're so impactful, but we've seen people pay off, parents' rents in the South, parents' mortgages in the South Bronx, pay for nephews' college educations, open up second businesses. The economic development aspect of our work is really incredible, and restaurateurs are incredible entrepreneurs. And so I think that's really our focus, is having the government spend their dollars in the communities like the South Bronx.
So who are you talking to and then I'll let you go after that, but who are you talking to in our New York State government, for example? Do you talk to the governor? You said you mentioned Mayor Adams as a partner, a good partner for you. Nice to hear he does something right. Jesus Christ.
No, I know. I mean, look, I can't speak to any of this other stuff, but
of course,
the Adams administration has been thoughtful and helpful. I have to give a big shout out to Kate McKenzie at Food Policy. She's been just overwhelmingly helpful. It's part of our 10-year food policy plan. There's great people that work at City Hall, and so that's all I have to say. And then in the governor's office, we've worked with some folks. Rodriguez, who is the Secretary of State for the state, not for the government, for the federal government, has been very helpful.
Understood. New York Secretary of State. Got it.
Yeah. Congressman McGovern in the federal government, Massachusetts, has been incredible. Dan Goldman, our congressman here. So anyway, a lot of people have been, are open to this idea, especially as, we're kind of looking down the barrel of AI taking a lot of jobs.
Ooh, yeah. Well, geez, that's a whole different story and a whole other show. So we're going to have to wrap it up here. Tell people how they can learn more about Rethink. What do they do? How can they donate? Whatever.
Sure. You can follow us on Instagram at Rethink Food, or you can go to rethinkfood.org, and just the contact us thing. We actually check it all the time. So we will respond if you want to contact us.
Oh, that's excellent. You can't think how many organizations I contact, and that you might as well be, literally peeing into the wind. I mean, nobody is checking their contact us page. It's amazing to me.
Yeah. We're proud of it.
Anyway, it's a great organization, Matt. Thanks so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. And thanks to all of your team who put this together. And thanks to our listeners for tuning in. I appreciate that too, as well as our sponsors for supporting this radio station. We'll be back sometime soon with another show. Thanks for tuning in. So long for now.
All right. Thank you.
What Doesn't Kill You, Food Industry Insights, is powered by Simplecast. Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food radio supported by you. Keep in touch at heritageradionetwork.org/subscribe.
Hey listeners, thank you so much for listening to HRN. We want to make your experience as a listener even better, and to help us do that, we'd love your input on our audience survey. It'll only take a few minutes, and by completing it, you can enter to win a $250 gift card from Goldbelly. Visit heritageradionetwork.org/survey to take the survey and to help us keep growing and improving. That's heritageradionetwork.org/survey. Thanks for your support.